Hi everyone, I'm Melanie Asmar. I'm the Bureau Chief for Chalkbeat Colorado. If you don't know Chalkbeat, we're a nonprofit news organization covering public education. We have bureaus all over the country. I've been with Chalkbeat Colorado for 9 years, most of that time as a beat reporter. And my beat is Denver Public Schools, but I've also written many stories about students with disabilities, and today I'm going to talk about one of those students to kind of illustrate the power of beat reporting. He was an 8-year-old boy. He attended an elementary school in Broomfield, and one day his principal stood behind him, kind of crossed the boy's arms behind his body, and gripped his wrists until the boy's body went limp, his eyes fluttered, and he foamed at the mouth. The school called 911. By the time the boy's mother arrived, he was regaining consciousness, but she never took him back to that school. She eventually filed a complaint with the state education department for the improper use of restraint. Restraint is when an adult physically restrains a student at school. It's allowed under Colorado law. You might have also heard of something called seclusion. Seclusion is shutting a student in a room. It's also allowed under Colorado law. And by the time I heard this story, I'd done some reporting on seclusion and restraint. I'd become curious about them after seeing a routine item on a school board meeting agenda, which is like a very beat reporter thing, right? Like, that's who's reading the school board agendas. And the routine item mentioned that school districts were required by law to compile these annual reports on their use of restraint and seclusion. But when I asked for the reports, I found out that the state doesn't collect them. School districts were just writing them, and then no one else was seeing them. So I wrote a story about how, there was very little oversight of these practices that could be very harmful to students. And a year or so later, I came across the state complaint about the 8-year-old boy. And when the state investigated, they faulted the school on several counts. They also cited the school district for not properly reporting the incident. And during the next legislative session, state lawmakers passed new limits on seclusion and restraint. And this example shows why local beat reporting is really important. And the path to reporting this story was kind of smoother because Chalkbeat is focused on a single topic. I don't have to explain to editors sort of why education stories matter. We all sort of have subject matter expertise in education after doing this for so long, and we kind of have a shared language around education at Chalkbeat. And this impact is just one example. In the past year, Chalkbeat Colorado has tracked 60 impacts, some big and some smaller.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy Rosenblum. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Civic News Company, the parent company to Chalkbeat, or the parent nonprofit, I should say. Thanks so much, Melanie. As you can see, this impact was very significant. And Melanie knows the education beat in Denver. She's been covering it for more than 10 years before she came to Chalkbeat, and lives in our community, sends her kids to school here, and is very much enmeshed in our world. Her work is the epitome of the best of what local news should be. It's reflective of the community we serve, telling the stories of our most marginalized neighbors, whose stories wouldn't otherwise be told, to influence policy, share information, and connect us to one another. And yes, she's a part of a network of education reporters around the country. So Chalkbeat exists in 8 communities around the country, and we have a national desk that ties the themes together. You can see all the communities up there with teams like Melanie's that Melanie leads. And so Melanie's also connected to these beat reporters around the country and has a community of education reporters. And what I would say is what our CEO would say is she's an education reporter at heart. And we wanted Chalkbeat in every community, and we didn't initially think that Chalkbeat was expandable. Or scalable. And then 2020 happened. And in 2020, Elizabeth Green, our CEO, would tell you she was laying awake at night, wondering what she could contribute to the election integrity that was fizzling before our very eyes. And thus, VoteBeat was born. VoteBeat covers election integrity and administration. As we all know, elections are ultimately local. and was born as a pop-up, an experiment. An experiment that took, and it was launched 2 years ago as a full-time newsroom. We exist in 5 states for VoteBeat, and you can see they're pretty important states right now. And at the same time, we were having a conversation with KFF Health News about local public health. And local public health really isn't covered in a beat reporting way sufficiently in any community that we could find. And so next week, HealthBeat will be launched in collaboration with KFF Health News. We have 2 bureaus. We'll be launching in Atlanta and New York. And you can see that the expertise that Melanie brings to education, we will have experts in elections, we have experts in public health. We have 2 bureaus launching, and then we will have a 3rd bureau, fingers crossed, Colorado, coming next year. And so we'll see what happens. No promises, but I'm just really proud of the work we do and the work that Melanie and our team are able to create very, very locally and yet in communities all over the country. Thanks.